What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about Lucid. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So this upcoming week is going to be a very big deal for Lucid, as well as much of the greater market. But in Lucid's case, we potentially could be retesting that 50-day moving average or really start to break down even further. So starting off with macro data, we do have a lot of big things. Starting off on Monday, we have S&P Global Manufacturing and ISM Manufacturing. ISM is a little bit more of a smaller control group, but in both instances, the forecast is lower than the previous, so there is a certain level of contraction that is anticipated, which is rather odd because a lot of the other manufacturing data that we've had over the last month and a half has been absolutely on point. And we're kind of in this weird limbo right now in the broader market that if we actually have positive data, the market generally moves higher because we've already kind of written off the idea of a March cut. So again, positive data, we generally move higher. Inverse will of course happen. Tuesday, we don't really have that much. Wednesday, we have ADP employment, the mortgage applications. Last kind of report was very, very negative. So the market's going to be really looking at that quite closely. Thursday, we do have challenger job cuts in the past that has really moved the market. And then we also do have initial jobless claims. And then Friday is going to be kind of the icing on the cake. That is non-farm payroll, retail sales, and unemployment. So in reality, there's going to be a lot of big data coming out, a lot of which is linked to labor and consumers. And no different than companies putting out their earnings. We have a lot of big names that, again, could really move the market dependent on kind of what they gave for future guidance, top and bottom line. A lot of semi plays, but a lot of consumer linked stocks such as Target, Best Buy, and Costco, and a couple others. So it should make for a very interesting time. And then over and above that, though, market is going to be digesting the recent attacks against Iran on that did occur over the weekend. So the market's going to be pricing that in on Monday. So I think the big thing about this is retaliation. Iran or its allies, are any of them going to retaliate? That is going to be the very big thing that moves the market. So I think initially the market will see this as a negative and gray. And market generally doesn't like gray. Market always assumes the worst. So again, retaliation is going to be something that people kind of pay attention to. As far as this upcoming week, there isn't really anything planned for Lucid. So no interviews, no fireside chats. As far as events, this is what they have listed on their website. So for this upcoming week, looks like they're just going to be at a resort and club demo drive experience. But that'll be pretty much concluding on March the 3rd. And then just on March the 7th, Lucid Studio event, award winning. So I don't know kind of much about that, but they also do have their investor day coming right around the corner. So I'm sure that is going to cause a certain level of FOMO because this is the first time in a very long time that they're actually giving a roadmap to what they have coming up, right? And typically when companies talk about roadmaps, they're not just going to talk about 6 months down the line. They're talking about like 5 years at least. So the last time they did that was back in 2021. So yeah, I think this should cause a little bit of FOMO. So maybe by the end of the week, could see maybe just Lucid start to move up a little bit. But in regards to shorts going into this upcoming week, 33.35% of the free float is being shorted. Works to be 44.6 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow average still kind of where it has been the last week. So 75.4. So overall pretty good stuff as far as that goes. And shorts are still making up for a good chunk of the volume, but mind you, last week, which is rather odd, they kind of were a little bit more timid. So I don't know if that's maybe a sign that Lucid might be moving higher. I know they did have their earnings, and generally I think it was a lot of gray, and then dependent on how you are, there's good reasons to be optimistic and bearish based on their earnings. But interestingly enough, a lot of analysts and institutions seem to be choosing the latter and being a little bit more optimistic. So maybe shorts are doing the exact same thing. But with it closing exactly at $10 on Friday, that does mean that the $10 and below strike prices are considered in the money. So quickly popping over here, that does mean that we have 2,000 at the 10 and then 624 at the 950. So nothing too significant for open interest or anything like that. Based on the bulls, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around 11. So 1050 to 11 for the most part by the end of this week. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub 9 to 950. And some of that, again, could be because of Iran attack. So I think even Thursday, people were assuming that was going to occur. So generally, market doesn't like that all that much. With it closing again at $10 on Friday, it is trading between this pivot and this S1. So I'm looking at the one-day chart. So these are very strong support and resistance points. Reason why I bring this up is so you can kind of dollar cost average swing trade, but 989, that's going to be the next strong support. And if that does fail to hold, then potentially you could be seeing that 926 being the next strong support. So again, just kind of watch for that. 1091 followed by 1193 is going to be the next strong target / resistance points. And I think it's a little bit far-fetched to assume that the R1 will be touched today, this week, but maybe best case scenario could see a retest of this pivot point, and generally that's kind of a big deal. But aside from that, on the actual chart itself, like I said, this week we are either going to see further consolidation, like a breakdown, or breakout. So it's going to be a lot of extreme moves because there's a lot of big things coming out that could change the market's mentality of how consumers are. But 50-day moving average is always a very big deal for Lucid, and that's currently sitting at 1077. 10-day moving average, which was tested on Friday, luckily enough it held up, that is sitting at 995. So that's going to be a key level to really watch for early on in the week, so Monday and Tuesday. Most likely shorts, if they are going to wake up, it is going to try to be like to break below the 10-day moving average. So again, that's probably going to be their goal, because I've noticed more and more stocks, they now, like, I think shorts used to just do whatever the hell that they saw fit. They felt just justified to short and whatever cover, but now they're a little bit more strategic. They tried to break Lucid and other stocks at key levels. So this 10-day moving average is generally a big deal. So again, kind of just watch for it to ideally hold above that in the first couple of trading days, but we've been seeing kind of lower and lower volume. So this is where shorts, as well as algorithmic trading, kind of do make up for a good chunk of the daily volume. Because of the recent price action, you have stochastic RSI at 79. So it is considered a little bit overbought. First sign of weakness, you could see some consolidation. So again, given Iran attack and maybe some negative data, that could kind of justify a little bit more further consolidation. Last analyst rating did come out on the 25th. That was Cantor, $14. We also had Stifel, 17, and so forth. Nothing since the 25th, so it's kind of quiet. Logically, we still could get a couple new ones coming down the pipeline, such as Benchmark, Bank of America, TD, CFRA. I saw a lot of articles about CFRA giving a rating, but I don't think they actually did a official post. They just did kind of an article or something like that. But again, dependent on what analysts give, the market might see it as positive. So even though Cantor did downgrade from 21 to 14, 14 compared to where we are now is pretty good. So let me know your general thoughts on Lucid and where you see things going. Overall, I do feel that the first half of the week might be a little bit more negative, but as we go into a lot of big companies putting out their earnings, as well as a lot of key data on Friday, that could be justified reasons to kind of move higher. So I think first half of the week might be a little bit more on the negative side, and then we'll recover. So let me know your general thoughts. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. Put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades. Worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.